Dear guests, we're on the Nevsky Prospect and we start our walk here. A little bit of history. Nevsky Prospect appeared almost simultaneously with the city. In the 1710s, two roads were laid through the swampy area and they connected the Admiralty shipyard, Alexander Nevsky Monastery and Novgorod Path. A four-time avenue was called Big Perspective Road. Then it was renamed in honor of Saint Patron of our city, Prince Alexander Nevsky, who won a battle with the Swedes in the 13th century at this place. Since 1760s, construction of the houses along the prospect was carried out as one line of continuous unbroken facades. Since the beginning of 19th century, Prospect turned into the real business center of St. Petersburg with banks, shops, different establishments, restaurants, etc. For the centenary in 2003 of our city, Nevsky was decorated with artistic lighting, sidewalks were replaced with granite slabs. It's a real business cut of our city. The facades of 240 buildings of the 18th and 19th centuries face the avenue, and we make our stop nearby one of the oldest buildings, the merchant yacht, Big Gostiny Dvor in Russian, Bolshoy Gostiny Dvor. Gostiny Dvor means guest's yacht. In old times, merchants were called guests. On the appointed day, they were invited to the city to offer their goods. The first merchant yacht appeared in St. Petersburg already in 1703 on Berezovy Island, near the Peter and Paul fortress. Soon it moved to the left bank of the Neva River because of the debacle, and it was placed at the corner of the Big Perspective Road and the river Moika. A fire of 1736 destroyed it. By the decree of Elizabeth, daughter of Peter the Great, the new shopping arcades should be placed further from the Winter Palace, closer to Fontanka River, and ought to be built at the expense of merchants. They were granted to receive new building for eternal hereditary impartation. By the first architect Francesco Bartolomeo Rastrelli, author of the famous Winter Palace, it was planned to create majestic building ornated with sculptures and whimsical molding. Thrifty merchants slowed down the financing of this project in every possible way. Architect Jean-Baptiste Valin de la Motte developed a cheaper project, retaining the main principles of the previous one. But construction was too slow again. In total, it lasted 14 years. Many traders did not want to leave their old wooden shops until at last they were destroyed by another fire. Gostiny Dvor stepped back from the red line. Unlike the other buildings, essential space was provided for coaches parking. Length of the facade along the Nevsky was about 230 meters. The total perimeter of the building was more than 1 kilometer. That is why to the appellation was added prefix Bolshoy. In English it means big Gostiny Dvor. Along the Nevsky Prospect they sold textile, haberdashery, stationery and perfumery. Line was called Sukonne, that meant clothes line. Along Lomonosov Street and Duma Street there were the bigger and the lesser Surovsky lines. Surov or Surash was ancient name of the town Sudak in Crimea. Merchants arrived from this town to sell their different women's goods. Along Sadova Street they traded luxury and jewelry items. Line was named Zerkalne, or in English Mirror Line. The division by type of goods was not stable. It soon ceased to operate, although they remained the names of the trade rows. On the side of Duma Street, a special building was added, which became known as Feather Rows. The monumental six-column portico by architect Ruska was a continuation of these rows. Nowadays, both structures are newly made. Gostiny Dvor used to be a sort of self-sustaining town with chambers, offices, storerooms, open galleries and halls, and naturally a brisk market and a leisure place with its own customs and mores. Shopping arcades were visited by noblemen, esquires, students, artists, writers and poets. In those times everyone said that the big Gostiny Dvor played the first fiddle in the city. Trading places were owned or rented not only by merchant houses but also by factories and non-residential enterprises. The products of Narva line in Spinning manufactory and Thornton woolen mill were presented here. Food was not sold to avoid unsanitary conditions. At the end of 18th century, there appeared bookstores, despite the small demand. Merchant yard housed as well publishing houses, libraries, and literary saloons, selling early editions. In 1790s, the book The Journey from St. Petersburg to Moscow by Alexander Radищev was on sale here. The censors thought the book was a simple itinerary and let it to print. Meanwhile, it contained a sharp criticism of serfdom and the empress. The French Revolution took place those periods, and the book caused scandal. They called the author a rebel. He was taken into custody and sentenced to exile to Siberia. But there were as well funny episodes in the life of the yacht. The Grand Duke Nikolai Nikolaevich was passionately in love with shopkeeper's daughter, and once he went to ask Emperor's blessing to marry. Alexander III answered, "I am in kinship really with many courts of Europe, but I have not been with merchants one, and will not be." Here is the word play, court and yacht. Russian tradesmen had their own trade principles. As a rule, barkers stood at the entrance to the shop inviting customers. Inside trading started, and there were no price tags on the articles. The seller and the buyer discussed the price. With the arrival of foreign merchants, such customs gradually became forgotten. The Dutch introduced a fixed price system, which helped them to gain popularity with buyers. After the October Revolution, many salesmen did not believe in long life of Soviet regime, and they hid their savings right in the shops. So, in 1965, during the repair of one of the premises, a treasure was discovered, 8 bars of gold. During the Second World War, Gostiny Dvor was constantly subjected to German bombing. During the blockade, Market Center continued its work, and German air attacks fell on this area, especially on Sundays. There were many victims. But despite all the hardships, the competition for the best restoration project was held already in winter 42-43. In 1945, the building was repaired. In 10 years, its interior was completely redesigned. Individual shops were combined into one large suite of retail premises, so that to transport commodities inside the shopping center, the creation of an electric cars fleet, the canteen, and the library for the employees were intended. Much of what was planned was never implemented. In 1950s, there was a widespread trade of goods and credit. In case the desired ware was missing, then it could be ordered, and the buyer was advised of its appearance in the department store with a postcard. In 1972, metro station was opened, and in 1977, a stained glass window by the artist Korolev was installed in lobby. It depicts the execution of a demonstration on the 3rd July 1917. During the perestroika, Gostiny Dvor also sheltered black markets. In 1991, the store experienced a consumer boom. Due to the sharp depreciation of ruble, many citizens tried to buy at last something until money were completely devalued. Today, more than 3,000 Russian and international enterprises run business here, providing a wide variety of goods. Postscript: shopping centers in all corners of Russia have been built on the model of our Gostiny Dvor.